G'day everybody, Max right here, and okay, I got a very cool video for you today. I just kind of stumbled into the idea of this yesterday when I recorded the video that you guys saw yesterday, and I just recalled that in 2017 I made a prediction that in Q4 of 2019 will be the beginning of the next great crash, the next global financial crisis, if you will, the next Great Depression, etc. And I didn't make that prediction based on my knowledge of economics or any other factors like that. I based that prediction largely in part what you're about to hear today. And the principle was this. I believe that this was going to be orchestrated, and it was going to coincide with the desire to try and get Trump out of office. Now, it turns out my prediction was wrong by a couple of months. That's pretty good, but not exactly right. It turned out in Q1 of 2020, that's when the crash kind of hit. Coronavirus was used, not suggesting coronavirus isn't real, but the coronavirus was used as the mechanism to do it. And it turned out that prediction was pretty good. People wonder how I can make a lot of these predictions, why so many of them come true, and what you are about to hear is a huge part of why I make so many accurate predictions. The model of the world you are about to hear has just absolutely profound, and something I've used virtually every day since I first heard it, almost 20 years ago. This is part of a speech you're about to hear. The entire speech is about 1 hour and 25 minutes long. You're just going to hear 15 minutes of it, and it's the conclusion to what you're going to hear. The speech was given in 1994. And it's based on this book, The Creature from Jekyl Island, A Second Look at the Federal Reserve. The book and the speech are written and given by G. Edward Griffin. He's a friend of mine. I've met him a number of times. He's given me permission to use this. And I can tell you the book is the biggest book I've ever read. It's about 600 pages, and it is an absolute page turner. Just an incredible look at history and at the type of history you'll never hear anywhere else. And it really is everything you need to know about one very important cog in the machine that is kind of working to impoverish humanity for the benefit of a small group of people, and that is the Federal Reserve System. So there is 1 hour and 10 minutes of this speech I'm not going to share with you here because I don't want this video to be too long, but I'm going to just give you the highlights. It basically talks about the history, the insidious nature, the secretive, conspiratorial nature of how the Federal Reserve System was created and who it's designed to benefit, what its real objectives are, how successful it is at those objectives, and how the system of money creation works in the United States under the Federal Reserve System, which was modeled after the European mechanisms that were already in place. For those of you who don't know, there were central banks littered throughout all the major European powers, organizations, family dynasties like the Rothschilds and others. They were they created them, and eventually they became the heads of state invisibly behind the scenes. They became more powerful than the kings and queens of Europe, and they basically dominated the world. When the New World started over here in America, they did not have a grip on it through central banks, but they moved very quickly to do that. They first created the first central bank was eventually thwarted and defeated by Andrew Jackson. He was voted on the election promise to eliminate the first central bank of America, and he was voted in on that, and he successfully did it. There was a second attempt, which was also shut down, and then in 1913, we got the Federal Reserve System, and it stuck, and it worked, and we are still stuck with it today. And it fell in line and became a pawn of the European power brokers to basically maintain their power and dominance over humanity and keep the rest of us poor and stupid and everything else. It's a very important part of the story. I will talk briefly right now on the mechanism of how money is created, how central banks work. There is a central bank, but the system that it supports allows private banks they get the legal monopoly to counterfeit money. Money, if you empty everyone's pockets today, you're aware there's way more money than if you emptied everyone's pockets and emptied all the bank accounts 100 years ago and counted up all the dollars. You understand there's way more money today than then. How is that money created? It is the most foundational thing to understanding the economy that there is. Money is 1/2 of every transaction. We don't live in a barter economy anymore. If you're buying food, real estate, farmland, equipment, anything, you're half of the transaction, you're giving money, you are receiving the good or service. Money is half of every transaction. If you don't understand how it works, where it comes from, you have no chance whatsoever of understanding the economy, okay? If, in order to live in a capitalist society, you must have a free market money system. The free market must be allowed to choose what money it wants to do, which is why America had that for a long time, century plus, and that allowed them to overtake the old world. Now, there was a number of reasons why we were able to do that, but if you think America gave Europe several thousand years head start, there were roads and aqueducts in Europe 2,000 years ago. They came here, and without a central bank, America was able to overtake the old world in blistering speed with extreme capitalism. No central bank, no income tax. Can you even fathom that? No income tax. There was nothing. No welfare state, no social programs, no government-run education, no government-run healthcare, nothing. And the wealth and prosperity that it created was just incredible. So much so that it overtook the old world, even though it gave it several thousand years head start. Now, to how the Federal Reserve System works, like I said, it grants banks the legal monopoly and privilege to counterfeit money. Why is counterfeiting illegal? It's not illegal because someone gets something for nothing. That's not the reason why. If I invented a magic ray gun, I shot it at an apple, and the apple doubled, and I got an apple without working, and you still got to eat your apple, I'm a hero. I've just solved world hunger. Counterfeiting is not illegal because someone gets something for nothing. It's not for nothing. It's a theft. When you print money, what that does is this person gets the purchasing power of the money he gets to spend, but he doesn't get it for free. He is stealing it from everybody else who currently holds those dollars. He is effectively stealing the purchasing power from the existing currency holders. So people work, they save, they're holding dollars, and you come along and print the money, you're stealing the purchasing power from that money, because the printing of this money is like diluting a soup. The soup becomes less potent, i.e. the purchasing power of the currency goes down. Since the creation of the Federal Reserve, 98% of the purchasing power of dollars has been evaporated. That's because the soup has just been diluted so much every single year. The stated goal of the current Federal Reserve incarnation is that they are aiming for inflation of 2%. What that means is their goal is to steal 2% of the purchasing power of the nation every single year. So right now you work hard, you pay taxes between your state, local government taxes, your sales taxes, your excises, your fees, your etc. You're paying about 50% of your income. Every year that comes in, you're paying 50% in tax. Plus, now through inflation, they steal 2% of your savings every single year through inflation. And this privilege of giving it to the banks, that they are allowed to create money out of nothing. When you go to take a loan from a bank, if you're buying a house or you're buying a car on finance or you're buying farm equipment or a commercial building, you borrow money. That money springs into existence when you sign on the dotted line. It didn't exist before. The bank just gets to create it for free and it charges you interest. That's how the Federal Reserve System works. A little bit of background so that you can make more sense of what you're about to hear. But the real thing that I want you to understand about what you're about to hear is how the world works. You're all of a sudden going to understand media, Hollywood, the dynamics between countries. You're going to understand so many things in about 15 minutes from now. It is going to blow your mind. You'll see the world anew. And all of a sudden, so many things are going to make sense that used to confuse you. I was once told that we all have a model. From when we're a baby, we create a model of the world. And as we get older, more information comes in. We realize things don't quite add up. And we have to change the model in our world. When we go to university, we might learn something. We change the model of our world again. Since I learned this, the model of the world that I hold in my head has been virtually perfect. There's nothing that isn't easily explained once you know what you are about to learn. And so I give you this gift. This has been in the Members Area of Success Council for many, many years. So I'm also fulfilling another promise right now. I'm giving you some content from the Members Area. And I will come back at the end of this video of the 15 minutes you're about to hear. We'll go through some more details. Remember, this was recorded in 1994. He does a math example where the interest rate is 10%. So back then that was the interest rate, but the principles still hold true. And we will go ahead and listen to this now. I've got to unplug my microphone and let's go.
And my final topic before I reach the conclusion is one that I think you'll find interesting, and that is usury. What is usury? In the old days, the biblical times, usury was defined as interest on a loan. Any interest on any loan was usury. Well, in modern times, that's been redefined to mean excessive interest on a loan, not moderate interest, because, this is in keeping with the concept that if we work hard for our money, we save our money, we don't spend it, we sacrifice its pleasure, and we loan it to somebody for their venture, we're entitled to a reasonable return for that sacrifice. A reasonable interest seems fair and logical to most people. But what is this thing, excessive interest? Thomas Edison said, "People who will not turn a shovelful of dirt on the project, nor contribute a pound of materials, will collect more money than will the people who will supply all the materials and do all the work." I wondered about that when I read it. I thought, was Tom exaggerating? So I got my calculator out and I punched in the numbers. I took, for an example, a $100,000 house to be built. I assumed that $30,000 was going to go for the land and the architect's fees and the permits, that $70,000 would go for the actual construction of the house, the labor and the materials. I assumed that the buyer would go to the bank, put 20% down, take out a 30-year loan at 10% interest. I punched in the numbers, and I found out that the borrower will pay to the bank in interest $172,741 as compared to $70,000 paid for those who did all the labor and did all the work. In other words, the bank will earn 2.5 times as much money as those who produced. You may say, well, yes, but don't forget the time value of money. When you save money and you sacrifice its use, and 30 years is a long period of time and all this. No, not this money, ladies and gentlemen. Nobody worked for this money. Nobody sacrificed. Nobody saved it. This money was created out of nothing. And I suggest that $172,741 interest on nothing is excessive. I think it's time for a new definition of the word usury. Any interest on any loan of fiat money, meaning money made out of nothing. Now, this example of a $100,000 house, I should point out to you, is a grain of sand in the Sahara. This is nothing. You have to multiply this process by every house in America, by every hotel in America, every high-rise office building in America, every jet airplane, every automobile, every factory, every warehouse full of materials, every farm building, all the farm equipment. And you are talking about a river of unearned wealth perpetually flowing into the banking cartel that is so wide that you can't even think across it in your mind. The numbers are beyond comprehension. This is a dead short across the productivity of the nation. This money should be going to those who produce, not to those who have worked out a very nice scam. Where is this money going? You get the mental picture that maybe it's going into a big lake someplace. There's a big dam and it's building up. All this money is accumulating and these people are getting richer and richer and richer. Wrong. Doesn't work that way. When a person has all the wealth that he can possibly want or use for the pleasures of life, what is left? Power. Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, they're spending this money, this river of wealth is being used to acquire power over you and me and our children. They are literally buying up the world with it. And I don't mean they're buying up the real estate and the hardware. They're buying up control over the organizations, the institutions through which people live and act and rely on for leadership and opinion. Technically, in sociological terms, this is called a power center. These are the power centers of society, the groups through which people work. And this is where that money has been going, is to acquire control over these groups and institutions by buying up influence and control over the people who run them. And they're spending the money on that. That means that they're buying up politicians, political parties, television networks, cable networks, newspapers, magazines, publishing houses, wire services, motion picture studios, universities, labor unions, church organizations, trade associations, tax-exempt foundations, multinational corporations, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, you name it. Any group, any institution which exercises influence has been a target for control. And they have a lot of money to spend to acquire that control. Especially those organizations and individuals which supposedly are in opposition to themselves. This process has been going on not only in our country and in a more or less parallel manner in the other industrialized nations of the world, but ladies and gentlemen, in the so-called third world or underdeveloped nations, it has gone on so much further than you can ever imagine. In fact, it is now complete. These countries have been purchased already with this money. Did you ever wonder what's going on there at the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank? You don't hear much about that. Every once in a while on the back page of the newspaper you'll read that Congress authorized another $100 billion to go to the IMF, to be loaned to some little country or given to them, and they explain to us that this is to raise their standard of living. Well, you don't believe that either. That is an appearance of the fourth kind. It's not going to raise their standard of living. If it is, if that's the true purpose, they're not doing a very good job of it, are they? Because, you know, if you look at those nations, after all of these decades and the expenditures of hundreds of billions of dollars, you cannot point to one nation that has had its standard of living raised one iota. In fact, in most cases, it's the other way around. The reason is simple. That's not the purpose of the money. The money does not go to the people. It does not go to the businesses in those countries, which might have a chance of raising the standard of living. It goes to the politicians in those countries, to the governments. And it is used specifically to strengthen their control mechanisms over the people, to build collectivist totalitarian systems. Countries that start off as inefficient dictatorships get all the money from the United Nations and end up as efficient dictatorships. The money is used to strengthen their army and to strengthen their bureaucracies. These people, for the most part, couldn't care less about the standard of living of their subjects, so long as they live well, so long as they have their mansions and their yachts and their jet aircraft and their trips to New York, to the United Nations, and their suites at the Waldorf Astoria. Ideology means nothing to them. Socialism, communism, capitalism, fascism, what does it matter? Where's the money? This is it. And we're now dealing with second and third generation welfare families here. You know how hard it is to break a welfare family in our own country after the second and third generation. We have governments around the world that are now second and third generation welfare to the UN. There's not a chance in the world they're going to break away from that money. They wouldn't know how to operate any other way. It's a way of life. They're addicted. And they now are in place in the New World Order, where they're just waiting for you and me to show up. In fact, that's the other side of this. Not only has this transfer of wealth from America to the Third World not raised their standard of living, but it has indeed helped to lower ours. And that, too, was part of the plan. In many ways, they're trying just to waste money, to reduce our standard of living. A strong nation is not a candidate to surrender its sovereignty, but a weak nation is. If America can be brought to her knees, if she can be hungry, if she can be filled with despair, if there can be riots in her streets and she doesn't know where to turn, then she perhaps will willingly accept totalitarian measures from a United Nations peacekeeping force. The blue helmets might even be welcomed. Or rescue with an international monetary unit that has purchasing power for a while. This is how it's being played out, ladies and gentlemen. And so I want to just conclude by saying that the name of the game is not wealth. It is power. So what are we going to do about this? Well, it's obvious. We have to slay the creature. Obviously, that's the starting point. We can't allow this creature to continue. It has to be eliminated. But how are you going to do that? We're going to do it in Congress. Congress created the Federal Reserve System, and Congress can abolish the Fed. But we have to build some
Okay, I'll cut it off there. I hope you guys see, so I just want to recap what we heard. Step one, it really painted the picture. I left that in there. It's not, I left it in there. It helps you understand the quantity of money being stolen from you as an American citizen and channeled into the river of money flowing into the banking cartel. And you multiply this by decades and multiply this by every country on the planet, because almost every country on the planet has a central bank that's effectively owned and controlled by the same group of people. The quantity of money they've had at their disposal over these decades and really centuries is just mind-blowing. And that's step one. Step two, they have tried to take over the control centers of society. Movie houses, studios, newspapers, television networks, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, you name it. Any organization that has influence and control. And so their ability to direct the public is just mind-blowing. So, I mean, talk about BLM. I can't tell you how sympathetic I am to the black community is just incredible. I'm frustrated with BLM and outright angry at them and annoying because I think the BLM movement, in my opinion, is a mere, they're useful idiots to the banking cartel, the mega rich sociopaths on the planet, who part three is the destruction of America, all right? And the BLM movement is another movement that uses and abuses poor black folk into getting them to destroy America. And in order to achieve that, in order to do that to the black community has just been the, I guess, one of the targets and one of the most successfully economically slaughtered communities that I've ever seen. The hardship, it's really incredible. Like if you were the most racist, bigoted sociopath on the planet and you wanted to destroy a community, there's nothing you could do more there's nothing more successful at doing that than forcing them to live in a city run by Democrats for half a century. You can go through down the list, just Baltimore, Chicago, Detroit, you name it. If there's a city that has been owned and controlled by Democrats, and by the way, I think 100% of the Democrat Party and about 50% of the Republican Party is owned and controlled by these people that we're talking about. All right? But in those cities, the schooling system is so thoroughly destroyed that you've just got entire populations being robbed of the opportunity of getting an education. So there's one particular school district in Baltimore. It has 5 major high schools in it, over 1,000 graduating students every single year. Not one graduating student of year 12 can read at an 8th grade level. You think of the failures of the schooling system and how trapped they are. For years, people have been trying to help them with vouchers and create a system where they can escape the Democrat nightmare of their public school system. And they just will not be given that opportunity. No one will let them do it. So imagine, in order to not be able to read an 8th grade level by the time you finish high school, it's not just a failing of the school. That means every single one of those students, none of their parents can read at an 8th grade level. None. It's mind-blowing. How did this happen? Like, I'll stick with the BLM just for a minute, right? We seem to be on here. You go back 100 years, go back to 1920, and what's your picture of the black community? I see women wearing gloves, going to church, dressed in their Sunday best. Do you hear Ebonics? Do you hear, any of these kind of the crazy, the destruction of the language because they're so unread? Not even close to how bad it is today. The number of children born out of wedlock in the black community was lower than the number of children born out of wedlock in the white community in 1920. Now it's not even close. If 4 out of 5 black babies are born out of wedlock in 2020. And the destruction of the black family that happened since 1920 is just absolutely mesmerizing. It's horrible and it's mesmerizing. To blame racism for that is to say that we are more racist today than we were during Jim Crow laws. That argument just doesn't hold water. I'm not saying there's no racism around. There is and there always will be. There's nothing that can be done about it. We can try and reduce it, and it's a worthy goal to do so. But it's not going to, as an entrepreneur, you're always looking to, how do I move the needle? I'm an online entrepreneur. I don't spend hours and hours testing different colors of headlines on my web pages to see which one converts better. I might get an extra 1/4% if I change the color of the headline, right? It's not moving the needle. What would move the needle is to change the offer and throw in $2,000 worth of bonuses or something like that. So as an entrepreneur, I'm trained, what's going to move the needle? Focusing on racism to try and help the black community is a complete waste of time. It is not going to move the needle because we are infinitely less racist today than we were 100 years ago. But something has happened in that the black community has been destroyed. What happened? What did it do? Well, several things. Government takeover of schools. Probably the 2 big ones, really. Let's go 3. We'll do 3 points. Government takeover of schools, right? And then this zip code rule where you are stuck and trapped in these miserable schools and you cannot escape them. That's step 1. You take away a child's education. Now, when they hit their adult years, they're supposed to be earning, they're supposed to be producing, but they don't have the knowledge and wisdom to do so. It's an incredible crutch, right? Next, minimum wage. Minimum wage was invented in the 1800s because Chinese labor was coming in and undercutting white workers. And among Chinese workers, even though they could not speak the language, and sometimes they hustled, they worked very cheaply. They had 100% employment, and the white folk, some of the racist white folk, were like, "We're sick of this. They're taking away our jobs. Let's demand equal pay for equal work. If you do, and a minimum wage, both things. If you do the job, you have to pay the person exactly the same, no matter what. So if you had to choose and you had to pay everyone the same amount, Why not choose the person with better language skills and better what else? And all of a sudden the Chinese community got devastated. These things, they're sold to help, minimum wage, to help poor people. It's not. It's disastrous for poor people. You get a devastating left-hand jab with a school system that doesn't educate the children. What can educate the children after they've been robbed of that is if they have permission to go and work for virtually experience or very little money. But what they're getting is experience. They'll get on-the-job training. Employers are encouraged to train them, teach them skills like reading, math, etc. They can learn on the job, and eventually, some years later, now they can be worth earning a significant wage that they can actually live off of. When you do the left-hand jab of destroying their education, the right-hand knockout blow of you are not permitted to go to work unless someone is silly enough to pay you more than you are worth because you are a person without education, you are trapped in poverty. It's a huge ceiling on their ability to succeed, and anybody's ability to succeed. And if you need evidence of that, you need to look no further than China. Over the last 30, 40 years, 700 million people have been lifted up out of poverty in China. And the Chinese education system was as horrific as the world got. It was basically designed to teach the citizens that Mao was a god. That's what it didn't. It did not want an informed citizenry. They were useless. And I dealt with them in the 90s. I started importing things into Australia. Is it 90s? No, that's too young. I take that back. The noughties. I was importing things into Australia from China. And obviously, from this stage, it was already a little bit better. But I just some ridiculously stupid people I had to deal with. I'll give you one example. This one actually isn't mine, but someone was getting a webcam built. And they sent off the specifications, they designed it, sent a prototype, and the webcam came back with 2 cords coming off of it, one for video, one for audio. And the person said, no, this isn't the spec, you've got to do this. The audio and video have to be in 1 cord. I want 1 cord only because computers didn't have 2 jacks. Goes back to the Chinese manufacturer, they cut off 1 cord and send it back and say, okay, you've got 1 cord now. Obviously a webcam can't work without either video or audio. This is the kind of stupidity that you had to deal with, and I was dealing with something similar in a different industry. Thank God there were no bleeding heart do-gooders trying to help the Chinese citizens, saying you have to pay the minimum wage. In fact, the leftists tried that hard. They bullied everyone. Nike, Reebok, they're using slave labor in China. They're paying them $2 a month and blah, 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 and they were. And they were organizing boycotts of all these brands who used them, right? But thank God it did not work. Because what happened was after the devastating blow of the Chinese education system, entrepreneurs came in, Nike, Reebok, etc., paid them $2 a month to work. Over years, over decades, they got on-the-job training. They learned, they have skills, and eventually the labor became so valuable that the entrepreneurs had to pay them more because the labor is always able to go away into business for themselves and start earning money once they have the skills. And that should be the goal of every employee, to get the skills to go and work for yourself. That should be the goal. And that's what China did. And eventually they bid up their wages so high that they have lifted 700 million people out of poverty. The education system was horrific. And the free market came in paying them $2 a month and brought $700 million of them out of poverty over the next 2-3 decades. The third devastating blow is welfare. Welfare is just positively brutal. Forget about how destructive it is to the economy, how much money is taken from productive people. Forget about how it eliminates job opportunities and ways for people who are poor, who can get out of the rat race and get jobs because the economy is booming, because the money is left in the hands of productive people. Forget about all that. The psychological destruction that occurs to people who accept welfare is devastating, absolutely devastating. It's very, very hard to do when someone's giving you free stuff, but I cannot tell you, if you are on welfare and you happen to be watching this video, volunteer to get yourself off. Do what it takes. Stop accepting the checks. Commit to never accepting that handout. It changes the neurons in your brain and forces you to do whatever it takes. You will learn whatever it takes, you will hustle and do whatever it takes, and you will come out the other end a champion once you cut off that safety net. So these are just some of the things that are coming on. So I got super sidetracked there with the BLM movement. I had some requests for me to talk a little bit more about that too, because of what's going on at the moment. Back to how the world works and how the Federal Reserve System comes into this. Part 3, let's go back to that. Step 1, I wanted you to understand the quantity of money that has been working out there. Step 2 was the takeover of the power centers of society, media, academia, Hollywood, newspapers, etc. Part 3 is using that influence to create laws to destroy America. The ultimate goal is a one world currency, a one world government under the model at the UN, under the model of collectivism. America was founded on the belief of individualism. That's a big topic. I won't go into that now. In fact, you know what I'll do? I'll give you the opportunity to really dive deep on this. G. Edward Griffin has written an excellent essay on this. It's only about 20, 30 pages. It's available for free. I will put a link in the description, and it is a must read. If you don't understand the concepts of individualism and collectivism, it's a must read. It is the battle that's been going on in the world for 100 years. Most people can't even articulate it. So I'll put that in here. By the way, I'll also put in the description a link to G. Edward Griffin's stores. He's got some phenomenal stuff out there. A few weeks ago, I had an interview with Usury, a former KGB whistleblower. That was Ed Griffin doing the interview with him. I'll give you some tips here. In G. Edward Griffin's store, there's an audio and a book called The Politics of Cancer Therapy. I take that back. There's an audio called The Politics of Cancer Therapy. There's a book called, I forget the first title, but the subtitle is The Story of Vitamin B17. But it's basically about cancer therapy, but more importantly, the politics of cancer therapy will blow your mind. It's another huge piece of the puzzle about how certain individuals and participants took over the medical systems of America, and it's why the medical care in Australia is so poor and so expensive. And you'll understand it perfectly once you understand the politics behind it and the whole history behind it. There's another great thing in this thing, I have to mention it, an interview with Norman Dodd. Norman Dodd led a congressional committee to investigate non-American activity, I think it was. No, that was McCarthy, was it? Anyway, he investigated the tax-exempt foundations. So 1913, the Federal Reserve was created. 1913, the income tax is created. They go hand in hand. Of course, the income tax was sold to the people as a way to get the rich to pay their fair share. The rich were the ones who championed the cause. They wanted an income tax, knowing full well they would never pay it. They transferred all of their money into tax-exempt foundations. The Carnegie Foundation, the Rockefeller Foundation, etc., etc. They've never paid a penny of tax in their lives. Every now and again, you'll hear Bill Gates or Facebook guy, because they're darlings of the left and they toe the line, the media is kind to them, and it's reported that these wonderful people donated their entire fortunes to charity. It's just like Hillary Clinton, almost zero of that money goes to charity. It's just a way of paying zero taxes on their incredible fortunes. That's something that still goes on today. Income tax is used to slaughter the middle class. The rich do not pay taxes. So all of these things kind of coming into the picture now, right? But again, dialing it back to the destruction of America is a critically important goal. A strong nation is not a candidate to surrender its sovereignty to the United Nations, but a weak nation is. If America can be hungry, if there can be riots in her streets, if she doesn't know where to turn, then perhaps she will willingly accept a United Nations peacekeeping force. The blue helmets might even be welcomed. Or we can be rescued with an international monetary unit that has purchasing power for a while. This is where we are headed. This is why I know it's absolutely inevitable that the currency collapses, but I don't think they will do it on Trump's watch. That's not going to happen. I do believe that Trump is an outsider and genuinely wants the best for America. Trump is a big topic. I'm not going to go down that path yet. But I mentioned earlier, the reason I predicted this crash happening in Q4 of 2019, I was off by a couple of months, was to destroy the economy to help get Trump out of office. Likewise, when the currency collapses, they need their person in there to facilitate and structure the deal to get to create the new currency that they want. Could be special drawing rights from the United Nations, could be some other alternative, could be a few different things, but they want their guy in office. And we are in a fight for our lives to keep their guy out of office. So it's a very, very important election coming up. I'll throw another prediction out there. I do not believe that it happens today. There was a terrorist attack in Glasgow today. We will not see a terrorist attack in the United States until the election. The reason being, this is just a prediction of mine, the reason being terrorist attacks unite a people and galvanize us behind the leaders. The BLM thing is doing an incredibly effective job at dividing the nation, and they do not want to do something that would unite us before an election. So my prediction is there will not be any major terrorist attack in America. The rest of the world, go for your, they will. There will be, and there was just today, but not in America. What else do I want to say in here? Okay, I think I might leave that there. That's probably a pretty long video we've been doing. But once again, let me know if you like this content. Let me know in the comments below. Crazy conspiracy theory, do you believe it? Do you think it's sound? Let me know. Check out the links. I'll direct you a lot of things back to Griffin. He's just got so much great material. And like this video, subscribe, share it, do all the wonderful things. One other thing, I've just joined Parler. I'll put a link in the description. Parler is the new free speech alternative to Twitter. I never really got into Twitter at all, ever. I just downloaded Parler. I started playing around with it. If I get a lot of followers there, I might start posting and doing some cool things. So check that out and download Parler just to get off Twitter for your own sake. And then hopefully we can have some great conversations in there too. Peace and love, and I will see you guys soon. Take care.